So according to the latest M&S Family Matters report, climate change concerns continues to grow amongst UK families, with 64% of 5,000 respondents naming it as their top concern. And net zero, despite the challenge, presents one of the single biggest opportunities for the manufacturing sector, as the industry is in a unique position to help the whole of the UK achieve its net zero ambitions. As Lord John Hutton, ex-business secretary, said at Manufacturing Expo 22, everyone must now commit to a new national ambition. The manufacturing industry is the UK's third most emitting sector and responsible for a sixth of the country's total emissions. And while a decarbonised power supply at a reasonable cost is clearly key, businesses are being advised to have their own net zero roadmap in place by early 23. And clearly manufacturers are stepping up to the plate and are now ready for the challenge, arguably, or are they? We will find out in the next half hour. So just an easy one to kick us all off. Those sentiments from the M&S Family Matters report, does that already affect you? Do you see consumer choice thumping for one product over another that maybe has a lower carbon footprint? Thomas. Shall I start with you?
Yes. So I think in terms of, sort of net zero and, the whole sustainability angle, it's ultimately priority for brands in this day and age. And I think if sustainability and the initiative around, aiming to become, net zero, whether it's through whatever means necessary, isn't a core part of your values and your purpose, then ultimately you're going to be losing a lot of potential customers. And I think, as you said, in the reports, there are lots of reports out there which just show the increase in importance that consumers are putting on sustainability. And I think, ultimately, there are many ways of achieving that. We've recently achieved a carbon neutral status, but that's ultimately offsetting, our carbon footprint throughout the business. But we've taken further steps towards, becoming net zero and actually having a positive impact and aligning the messaging of sustainability with our brand. And an example of this is we recently launched in March this year a recycling returns initiative, and where we ship directly to our consumers, and we have a large customer base of active subscribers, so who are purchasing our product on subscription on a bi-weekly and monthly basis. We agreed with our courier to set up a process where upon delivery of their new box, they can return their previous box with all of the bottles inside, as well as the insulation. And again, one thing that I didn't touch on before was that we're a chilled product. So we have an additional barrier with everything that comes with distribution and logistics. So that that distribution to the customer, that last mile experience and process has to be in insulation, so it has to be chilled. So we achieve that by using a insulated liner, which is made out of recycled denim, and then an ice pack, and then obviously the box. And so that's delivered with every single customer order. And so with this initiative, we've seen a phenomenal uplift in engagement within returning the packaging as well as the bottles. And so what we are now in a process of doing, we've had, a significant amount of packaging returned and obviously a significant amount of used bottles returned. We're now working with a few companies to establish a way of sterilizing and then deep cleaning the bottles to then put them back into our supply chain. And from creating that sort of cycle, that loop mechanism in terms of packaging, we're seeing is, the response from our customers is fantastic, because, they can see we are purpose driven. We're taking positive actions towards sustainability, and they're buying into what we're doing. And so from my point here is that sustainability, it doesn't just have to be about sustainability and about the environment. It can also positively impact the margin and your costs of a business if you're doing it correctly, because that bottle and those packaging and that liner and that ice pack is now coming back into circulation. So the savings on that are also, you know, a really positive aspect too. So I think 100% it has to be a part of every business's core, but it's about establishing the best ways that you can achieve that.
It's interesting because a lot of people would pay lip service to, in fact, we talked about it in the last roundtable, circular supply chain, and you've got an actual real example that you're saying is, you know, it's not just lip service, it's actually hitting the bottom line, or it is having a positive effect on margins, which is really good to hear for the community as a whole. Doug, I know that you've got biodegradable tea bags and that kind of thing. Do you want to pick up?
Yeah, we've got some interesting things that we'll be doing over the last 6 months. We sell tea to hotels, restaurants, coffee shops, tea shops, and we had a shelf life of the way we packaged it and vacuumed the product, a shelf life of 10 years, right? Now, who needs that sort of shelf life? So we revised our packaging, completely changed. We're not fully changed yet, but we have reduced our, improved our packaging, but reduced the shelf life from 10 years to between 2 and 4 years. And the question came up, has the customers really noticed? Do they care? They care about the packaging, but they don't look at the shelf life, right? And that's been some element of surprise, because we consider one of our USPs to be the extended shelf life of our products, but that is not the case. There's more emphasis on plastic and the use of plastic, and how much, the extent to which we use it in our delivery and supporting our products. But the other thing we've offered is, and we don't pack in bottles, but we do pack in plastic bags, which are special bags made for the purpose. And we offer our customers the opportunity to return those. We supply them a label, we supply them packaging to actually send those packaging back to us. We don't reuse it, but we make sure it's recycled properly through the proper channels. So we just see improvements, and our customer base is, we've seen a growth in that because of the attitude and the way and the manner that we're now packaging our products. Everything is, all our packaging now is either recyclable or disposable or compostable. So that's where we are, and we've seen a difference.
That's positive too. Brilliant. Nick.
It's interesting. I guess for me, the journey began, goodness me, 15 years ago, 17 years ago. And it was, I always remember working with Beefeater, and we had 16 tons of botanical waste per week. And the first thing was, okay, what do we do with it? Because we used to feed it to cattle, pigs, but it wasn't, it was no longer FEMA 100 compliant, so we couldn't sell it into the food chain. So we managed to get it composted, and we used that as a potential selling point, that I could give you the GPS coordinates of where our botanicals have been spread and which fields they're on. And so that always, and by the way, one of the big things was that had to cost less than what we were doing. So 0 to landfill, no additional cost. And so we got several benefits. First of all, I went down and saw the farmer, and he gave me some lovely bacon, which is really nice, which was great. But yeah, so that went out. And so I always took that forward into whatever I'm trying to do. So that went into, I guess, Laverstoke Mill, which was a BREEAM outstanding building. So how do you do that? How do you look at the utilization of a biomass boiler? And then in Southwest, with a smaller company, how do you design your supply chain so that actually you can get not only environmental sustainability, but also margin benefits as well? And this is where I'm kind of looking at now in circular supply chains. So Thomas, I'm looking at how we get our wax back on from the top of the bottles. How do we bring that back into the business in a cost-effective way? And I always hark back to the R. White's lemonade bottles or the milk bottles and all those things. And I'm sure we saw all the WhatsApp videos ago, and this is 30 years ago. What are we doing now? And I keep looking at, okay, how do we start to become inventive with what we do with our packaging, so that we can actually not only look at the next 6 months, year, and I'm sure I said this 6 months, year, 2 years, but how do we take cost out of the business by environmental sustainability and being ahead of the game? That's the real importance to me. How do you stay ahead of the game, ahead of the curve for what the consumer really wants? So I hope that kind of gives an insight in where we are.
I've had a really bad idea about the wax on top of your bottles.
Yeah.
Given that everyone's a little bit tipsy when they're consuming your product, I would take that wax off and create something with it, and you could do like a competition for best creature, and you get a free bottle of gin, and you have to send, you could send that little box that they put the design in, and you post it off all pre-labeled back to you.
Sure.
You could do a quarterly best design competition. I've just gone off on one. I love the wax on the top of your bottles, though. Don't want to lose that.
Okay, I am going to say drink better, not more, though, and that's why you drink with us.
Well done. We'll make sure we keep that.
So tipsy, not quite sure about. Okay, relaxed and enjoying the moment, I would go with.
Go on. I've got
that's one of the things that we have thought about, by the way, about how do we get the wax back. That is one of the things that we've looked at.
You've already looked at it.
We have, yes.
Brilliant. Good. Excellent. Sam.
In terms of sustainability in supply chains, I think with the price of energy and input costs that are going into manufacturers and 3PLs and trucking and haulage companies, I think they're all scrambling to solve these problems quickly, because if from their perspective, energy inputs are just a cost on their business that they have to pass on.
So this is scope 3. So let's be clear, right? In net zero, that you're with downstream and upstream of you is scope 3.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Sure. So I think with the crazy prices we've seen, like of energy cost inputs, I was on tour this week actually, with a lot of 3PLs across the country, and it's amazing what they're doing. I went into a 3PL and they're deep freeze warehouses of 60, 70, 80,000 feet, all running on solar power now, almost 90%. And they're just like, it's the dream. I can stick these things on the top. I've brought my carbon emissions, my footprint down incredibly. I don't have to pass all this crazy energy increase onto customers. Looking at other 3PLs who are looking at being the first carbon neutral 3PLs in the whole country, and they're aiming to do that by 2025. And this is all being spurred on by cost increases that they don't want to have to pass on, because they can see that if this flows through the chain, that it will destabilize everyone. But if they can find a way through and be the first people to solve these problems, it will absolutely benefit both themselves from a commercial point of view and all their customers as well. So there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes in that vertical through manufacturing and 3PLs. But from a brand perspective, I would just say sustainability isn't a trend. Like, if you think it is, you're wrong. It's absolutely the thing, and you need to pay really close attention to this, because every consumer out there is concerned about this, and if they're not, those consumers won't be around for very long. So what I would say is, really, really hone in on that piece. Have a think about curbside recycling. Have a think about returns. I know a lot of D2C companies who are looking at, again, packaging returns, because it's lowering margins, getting consumer buy-in, just like Thomas said. And all these things really do matter, and I've seen it work, and it does work. So really, really do think about all of those pieces of the puzzle of your brand and your packaging and all the input costs, because it will make a difference.
So we talked about brand and packaging. I think we've all talked a bit about brand and packaging. And I've got down here that 50% of manufacturers do see it as an opportunity, net zero, let's say. I've got down here, does net zero present an opportunity to rethink the product? So I was in my research, Nick, I was looking, went down a rabbit hole actually, and ended up stumbling on Foxhole Spirits, which you would have heard of, who they take botanicals, lemons that have already been used and stuff, and build them into their product. And obviously I just would love to understand. I mean, I can't imagine that being a scalable thing, but I'd love to get your thoughts on it. So the question is, I suppose it's upstream. I always get confused which one it is. It's upstream from you. Things are coming in. Is net zero an opportunity to rethink the ingredients or what's going into the product. A bit like we talked about, you talked about, you know, reducing complexity in the packaging. Do we reduce complexity in the product itself? Question. You're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, schoolboy error there. Do apologise. Okay, so regarding foxhole, absolutely seen that before. So, but I think there's a different way of looking at it. So, who can you partner with that can? So, okay, let's take lemon peels or orange peels or whatever you want, and that as an example. So, I like the fact that okay, I only want the peel. I don't want the fruit. Who can you partner with that you can go into a joint venture? I'll take the peels, you take that. So that's perhaps another way of looking at it. So therefore, you both get benefit. Okay, your waste and how you remove it from the business is decreased, but you also cost of the actual ingredient that you're using should go down because there's a second value stream to it. So that's one thing that I think is really useful to look at. Just looking at personalization, I've used botanicals that they've been wasted. So I put in place that with one distillery, once the botanicals have been used, that went back in the biomass boiler. So how do I get thermal energy out of the waste botanicals? So that was another thing looking at. How would I use those for, you know, instead of salt baking, I've used botanicals to kind of botanical bake fish. What's the secondary use that you can use it? How can you repurpose it is another thing. My waste packaging that I
sounds amazing, like botanical smoked fish. Oh my god.
Yeah, absolutely. But then you can build it in. I'm kind of going off piece here a bit, but then you can build it into your tastings, then you can build it into your brand that, you know what, this is another way that you can use this or enjoy this or how you can do it. So I always talk about how I could use, let's say, pastis with cookery, so doing a moule marinière or something. But going back onto the topic, taking cost or out of the business or using a pre-used item again. So I've now negotiated into all of our boxes or cases that go out, we bring them back on site and then send them back to our e-fulfillment center and they use them to go out a second time. So that gives additional revenue. Not only does it take cost for my packaging waste, it also means I haven't got to pay them the first time. So that 67 pence case has now gone down to, let's say, 30% or 30 pence. So I've halved the actual cost because it's had a double use. So that's really important to us. How do you bring them back in the supply chain? But how do you then reuse them?
Sticking with product then, like you've all got things coming in from far, far away, I suppose. And there may be no answer to this question yet. So Thomas, I get quite excited by this, you know, that you're being asked the impossible question is, you know, what do I do? Is it an opportunity to rethink the product, net zero?
Yeah, I think, you know, from a first use perspective, you know, rethinking the product, I think every individual product and every product vertical is going to be different. In our situation and in our case, you know, a USP of what we do is around, you know, high quality raw ingredients. So I don't know how we can, you know, change that in a way where we can, you know, offset or use, you know, byproduct or used product or, you know, sort of discarded raw material, which a lot of, you know, standard sort of juice companies will do, but it's a different processing method and the end product of the final use, the purpose is very different for the consumer. You know, our consumers are purchasing our product for its functional, nutritional benefits. And so us delivering the product in the highest quality state in an uncompromised format is essential. However, from a secondary use perspective, as Nick said, there are multiple areas for which we have looked into. We haven't executed on any because it's an additional resource and it's going to require an additional investment. But as we scale, we will have the opportunity to begin to, you know, test and trial using our byproduct for different types of products. And an example, you know, so we put whole raw turmeric root, whole raw ginger root, whole raw watermelons, which are fleshed on site. We're currently processing around, you know, 5-ton watermelon a week. We then use, you know, raw pomegranate seeds, raw pineapple whole, including the core. So the yield of our manufacturing process is very good. We'll achieve, sort of a 70 to 80% yield, but that's through the uniqueness of our, extraction process to deliver the finished product. But that 20% of byproduct is ultimately high quality raw material. So we have tested things such as snack bars, we have tested things such as pastes, and a very interesting area which we're looking forward to, diving into once we have more resources within the business, is actually repurposing that for pet food. And again, obviously raw turmeric root and turmeric, because of its active compounds, is a growing market in terms of, pet supplements. So we've tested some areas and how we can utilize that and put it into a product format, which would then be extremely appealing, because again, it's come from raw material for pet owners and the pet market. So I think that secondary use for us as sort of where we sit in terms of manufacturing, that's the opportunity, because then again we'll be able to tell the story and explain the journey, and also give this journey into another product. And from there, there's just masses of opportunity. So not only in terms of reducing cost, driving towards net zero, but also actually creating a commercial model which is actually beneficial to the market.
It's interesting. I again went down another rabbit hole this week, and I was looking at, forget the name of it, and Nick will probably know the name of it, but it's a cold fermentation of pineapple. It's a Mexican drink. Do you know the name, Nick? No. Okay. Anyway, it got me thinking about Marmite. I'm showing my age now, but Marmite is a byproduct of the beer industry, and the fact that this kind of external pressure on manufacturing businesses could end up producing the fact that you've got pineapple in your processes, Thomas, you may not want to put the turmeric company name to an alcohol, but the fact that you can take pineapple and throw some yeast in there and create this, I forget the name of it, but it's a cold fermenting process. It's a Mexican, it's kind of probably more like kombucha or something like that. Do you know what I mean? I'll find it, I'll send it to you. So yeah, it's kind of like Marmite all over this, isn't it? It's like if a biomass or a byproduct or another product. Doug. Yes. Rethinking the product, obviously you're or ultimately, are you looking to your supplier to be carbon neutral as they're delivering the tea leaves to you? I mean, what are you sort of having those conversations?
When we went through supplier selection, then that was quite a key element. And what we've found is that a number of our suppliers are now currently carbon neutral. That they're using photoelectric, PEV, electricity generation in a significant way that makes them actually carbon neutral. So that was a big point in terms of retaining our supplier and growing our business with those particular suppliers who are in this market. The ones that care about the product and how it is used, and they have an initiative to become net zero, or they are net zero already. So that was a significant thing. Just a bit of light relief, right, amongst all of this.
Brilliant.
I've just acquired an electric car, right?
I've been in that electric car.
And it's blown me away, right? It performs just like a diesel car I had before. And but this might be something to do with my nationality, right? I can go down to the local supermarket, plug in and top up, and it's free. What do I do with that? Share it and say, well, we're on a path to net zero here. We're trying to reduce emissions and all that sort of thing. So my ventures in electric cars making a contribution. And it appeals to me, my Scottish nature.
You're not the only one. My brother-in-law takes his electrical car to the supermarket, plugs it in, and goes for a run. Okay, and then comes back from his run, picks his car up and drives home. So he's charged his car, gone for a run at the same time. He loves it.
Win-win. Really?
I would never have believed it, but I'm totally sold on the whole thing. I still have some anxiety about doing a long journey, but hey, if I'm saving that much on my car and my fuel, then wow.
No, I was reading about that. Obviously, the big sticking point in all of this is air travel, and then I went off in my head going, oh, I don't like the idea of being an electronic airplane. I do not like that idea at all. But yeah.
But I think there's other opportunities. I mean, you were talking about Marmite. I mean, I worked with Unilever and made brain heart infusion or microbiological media from the waste ingredients of yeast and stuff like that. And one of the things that we do with waste is we do anaerobic digestion. So all of our waste goes off-site, anaerobic digestion, methane, power generation. So that's kind of clean energy. Well, to an extent anyway. Then one of the other aspects that, I really think about is that how can you use it? So you're talking about aviation fuel. Why not just ferment it? Take the alcohol out of it and you've got bioethanol. It's as simple as that. I just think we need to become more inventive. Shanks McEwen, this is one of the waste sites up in Bedford. Now, I remember this was going back to, gosh, it would have been 1992. In their landfill sites, they used to put gas pipes in, take all the gas in, and they used to run generators on it, running at 90% of methane from the actual anaerobic digestion of the waste tips and 10% diesel. I just think we need to think about one of the things I love is borrow with pride. Look at other industries. What would they do? How can we do it? How can we use a technique from them? Take it on site, modify it, make it ours, but make it more effective and more efficient. It's one of the big things that I really enjoy. Talking, discussing, sharing ideas. Borrow with pride. What can we do from other industries? Take techniques or methodologies, provide them with a fuel source, or take their waste and use it in our product.
What we need, Nick, is some of your gin, us lot reconvene somewhere, and what we need to work out is how we create hydrogen from what we have, because that's where the money is.
Okay. Yeah, very possibly.
I'm gonna one or two more questions. We all have to go. Sam, when is a good time to leverage all of this as a marketing advantage? Like, at what point can you legitimately go out to the market and say, look at us, we're green, we're net zero, all that kind of stuff?
It's a really good question, because you have to be very careful. You're not going to greenwash what it is that you do. And, down the track, someone pulls the hood off and suddenly, you're suddenly a bad person on Twitter, and that's nowhere that you want to be. I think net zero is really, really throwing up new opportunities for new products. And I think that the next wave of new products will be really honed in on this thing. I mean, I've been working with a few insect protein companies at the moment who are starting to build insect protein into pet food, human food, and cattle feed as well. And there's all kinds of things going on here that aren't actually in the marketplace yet, but they're really on their way, and they're coming. And there will be a paradigm shift across, the Western world, at least, into new ways of consuming products, and new ways of getting nutrients and energy into humans, really. When should you go to the market? As fast as possible is my answer. Build a product, test it really fast, throw it out there, see if it works. Fail fast. It's kind of like a bit of a Silicon Valley chat, but it does work, because you can spend 3 years in a lab working on something, or you can do it fast, get it out there, iterate, go again. There's no harm in getting out there one time and failing and going again, because that's how you learn. So I would always be really encouraging to new startups and new businesses who want to push the envelope of what they're trying to do. You may not get it right the first time, but you will learn a hell of a lot doing it. So definitely, if you've got an idea and you think there's a way forward, definitely do it. But just be cognizant of, if you promise something on the tin, just make sure you deliver behind that, because there's no point trying to hide your way behind statistics or greenwash it, because in the end you'll get found out. So yeah, do it right from the beginning, but do it fast.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask, in preparation for this, I got talking to a guy called Matthew Isaacs, who has just hasn't in the last 2 or 3 years has set up something called My Emissions. Are you guys aware of this product app? I just want to get your thoughts on it. So it's carbon labeling. There's probably other competitors in his space, but the idea of your product having, it's a bit like fridges. You used to get ABCD on fridges. It's a similar kind of labeling system for food. Is that something you guys are considering, have looked at? Thomas?
No, we're not aware of that. But I think, again, as the guys are saying, I think it's the direction that all brands have to be going. And I think there's hopefully going to be continued innovation, continued opportunities within this space. And I couldn't agree more in terms of, acting fast, implementing, but making sure that it's part of the core and it's done correctly. When it is, then that's the time to, distribute the message and actually taking everyone with you on that journey, including your customers, has real value, showing the wins, the losses, the challenges. And I think that's, again, something which a lot of manufacturing companies, because they're so focused in terms of the deliverance of the product, you almost miss the opportunity to actually share that journey. And everyone's facing significant challenges. Currently in this climate, it's something, obviously, from my perspective, being in my early 30s, I've never seen before. But it's actually, we're all working hard to get through it. We're all trying to make positive steps, and we're continually making impactful actions, which ultimately, if continued over time, will really make a positive change.
Doug, gonna put little stickers on your tea talking about carbon footprint, in a position wanting to do that yet? You've got to shake.
Not right now. No, we have no plans to do that right now, but we recognize there's a need there and an awareness thing, so we're thinking about it ongoing.
Nick?
We won't be putting stickers on, but I think what we will be doing, and this is one of the things that we do quite often, when we get brand ambassadors and hosts, we do make sure that the environmental kind of aspects of the business are forefront in what we say. But you're right, say what you do what you say. Don't overgloss it. Sometimes underplay it. Well, of course we do that. It's natural to us. Why wouldn't we? It is the kind of attitude we take, rather than putting it, absolutely massive in everyone's face. It's, of course we do.
But it's now the time, isn't it, to be a bit more brazen, to be a bit less British. Think about this. Like, that's what people want to see when they're buying a product.
Absolutely, in some aspects, but in other aspects, no. Okay, I always say, with a bottle of gin, you buy the first bottle because it looks pretty, the second bottle because it tastes good, and the third one because of your supply chain. So you've got to nail all three of those. So if you really change massively the brand image and the first view, if the customers aren't at that point in their purchasing cycle, you don't work. So you have to make sure.
Do you see a future where those three are turned on its head?
Perhaps, absolutely. I think the third one becomes more important, but that's the message the message we put out subtly.
Okay. What have I got? No, I've got 2 minutes. I don't want to ask any more questions. Free fall. Is there anything else you two want to gain from each other before we go? I feel like I have run the show, but this is a nice forum where we can pick up things. I promised I'd come back to something, didn't I? Doug, you mentioned something that you wanted to get people's thoughts on.
Well, yes, no, I think just coming up about stickers and things like that. We find customers come back when they taste the quality of the product, when they realize they've got value in the product rather than fancy color stickers, right? So we don't do that because it can have a negative impact as well as a positive one. Yes, it might get attention, but customers come back on the basis of a quality product rather than the advertising or the marketing or whatever. I don't know, any other comments on that would be appreciated.
I just wonder if it's a demographic thing as well. Like Thomas, are you seeing, I would imagine, and I'm guessing at this, that gin and tea have a slightly older demographic than your product, which is turmeric, which is all about repairing the body more quickly, anti-inflammatory, so people can go and train harder, faster. Do you see different story from your side? Do you think your audience would, it sounds like they would clearly like to know more about, the stuff that you're doing in the sustainability space?
Yeah, I think with social, clearly there's, more of a need for awareness and, sort of taking the veil off of brands from the younger demographic. But in terms of sort of purchasing demographic, we have, the majority of our subscribers are sort of 35, 45 plus, okay, male and female. So I think, it's ultimately finding that core value in the brand, and then, that ultimately will, direct you to the consumer.